The motorcycle of Walker's dreams was sitting in his his garage, untouched. The long hair he used to run his fingers through was chopped off because it was too greasy from his constant state of stress. His niece, Piper, who had an affinity for changing her own hair at the drop of a hat, had finally declared that he looked like the main character from a bad 90s movie and given him a new haircut. He had to admit, it wasn't half bad. Piper herself was now sporting bleach blonde hair with the tips dyed black. It didn't quite fit her normally sunny disposition, but it was fitting for the time being. She was old enough to dye her hair whatever color she wanted to, especially after all the shit she'd had to deal with recently. If she wanted to shave her head completely like 2007 Britney Spears, he would cheer her on. Who even needed hair? After taking a shower, brushing his teeth, and deciding he was too lazy to shave his short beard, Walker pulled out the one drawer in the dresser that he had emptied for his stuff and put on a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt. Considering his job mostly involved sitting in coffee shops and ghostwriting the latest crappy novel, the scruffy, tattooed look wasn't going to hurt anyone. It was his one callback to his previously rebellious and carefree life. For the first time in months, he was all set for what he hoped would be a day spent with his laptop, coffee, and some goddamn peace and quiet. Slipping his phone into his pocket, an Android, because at the time he'd purchased a phone he thought Apple phones were for sheep, he made his way down the stairs. The thought seemed so stupid and insignificant now that it almost made him laugh. The luxury of thinking minuscule things mattered, or that he could still have some semblance of normalcy, was ridiculous. His nieces and nephews were the only things that mattered anymore. When Walker reached the kitchen, he opened the fridge, already grimacing before he peered inside. Grocery shopping jumped the line on his to-do list. His fridge back at his apartment usually contained several takeout containers that he'd left in there for entirely too long, to the point that when he did eventually clean it out, the contents looked more like a science experiment than a recognizable meal. When his brother, Cole, mentioned his unhealthy eating habits, Walker would just shrug and go into a monologue about the discovery of penicillin in mold. It was a medical accomplishment of epic proportions. Therefore, what were a few rotting chow mains in the grand scheme of things? Cole would roll his eyes, then invite Walker over for dinner, where his sister-in-law, Paisley, wouldn't allow him to leave without taking all of the leftovers home with him. She wasn't subtle about wanting Walker to eat a real meal. If he refused, she would just threaten to drop it off at his apartment, or ask whatever girl he'd recently dated and never called back to take it to him. If there was one thing Walker knew about Paisley, it was that she won just about every argument she was a part of.